need to know.
So, Mr. Turnage, it's really nice of you to talk to me today. I know that you have a lot of information that will help a lot of people. We're going to talk about the coronavirus vaccine.
I see. I'm more than happy to spend some time with you, Lisa.
Yeah.
As always.
So you're a man of science, and we'll talk about that in a minute, but I want to first hear a little bit about your background, because, as you know, a lot of black people are skeptical about vaccines, being in research studies, and I know that you understand both sides. So tell me a little bit about your background.
My background well suits me actually for participating in vaccine studies, primarily because I started working in 1982, and this is what, 2020? So you're talking about almost 40 years.
Ooh.
And I probably spent the better part of those 40 years doing research. I have a thorough understanding of the various research designs, the benefits of the advantages and disadvantages of controlled experiments versus quasi-experiments versus just single entity studies.
Single entity studies, what is that?
Well, that's when you basically don't have a control group, and I would call it a more of an observational study. You identify the people or thing that is getting what you would call the treatment, and then you observe them pre and post treatment, and you make some conclusions, generally fallacious.
You're using big words. A lot of people are going to be listening to this, and they don't really understand science, so I need you to help me.
Okay. If you don't have a control group, that means there's no there's no group of people with which you can compare against the individuals who receive whatever it is you're testing.
Mm-hmm.
So if I, for example, believe that a particular job training strategy would work, and then I make this job training strategy available to people, but I don't have a control group, then I look at what their situation was before they went in the program and after they left the program, and then make conclusions about what the program did for them. Those conclusions are invariably overstated in many cases, because you don't know what would have happened to them had you not done had they not participated in your program. You don't know if the outcomes that you're seeing post their participation are in fact due to the program, or due to their own individual initiative, or due to their particular skill set. So you need a comparison group of people who don't get the treatment.
Uh-huh.
And so I was very comfortable with that. I studied my early jobs in New York. We worked on randomized controlled experiments. We worked on, if we couldn't do randomized controlled experiments, we went to what we call a quasi-experiment, where you have a comparison group that you identify, but they were not, you didn't randomly create them. For example, if you are studying the effects of a program in DC on a particular group, you could then compare them to a similar looking group in Baltimore who didn't have what you're evaluating in DC. That's a comparison group, a quasi-experiment, not entirely free from bias, not as good as a random experiment. And so when I saw that they were doing randomized trials for the vaccine, I knew exactly.
How you doing?
When I saw that they were doing randomized trials for the vaccine to try to identify a working vaccine for coronavirus, I thought that was something that I should participate in.
Yeah. So a lot of people are, especially black people, are skeptical of vaccine research. Do you understand why they're skeptical?
I understand why.
Why?
I'm very familiar with the Tuskegee Institute experiment where blacks were exposed, were blacks who had syphilis. That's one of the misnomers about the Tuskegee experiment. a lot of people assumed that they were injected with syphilis. They were not. There was a sort of a scan of the community, and they found some black men who had syphilis, and they used them in a study without giving them treatment. And even when they had found a cure for syphilis, they decided not to tell those men and to follow them longitudinally beyond the treatment, beyond the identification of a cure, so they could have more complete information about the ravages of syphilis. It's a horrible thing. You wouldn't do that to an animal.
Right.
So I understood that. I also understood there was a lot of concern about the study at Johns Hopkins. I think the criticisms of that study were overstated. The lead paint study. But in general, the literature is replete with examples of people who are being dishonest in research. Call me a optimistic fool, if you will. I just believe that we're past those things, and I believe the likelihood that you could do something like that now with all the checks and balances and controls and all the people of goodwill who are involved in these studies is virtually zero.
Well, we've been doing a lot of street outreach, talking to people about vaccines, and we hear things like, well, they're actually going to inject you with coronavirus, or we hear, well, I don't want to be first, or they're not going to experiment on me. So since you understand the reason people are skeptical, but you also understand science, what might you say to convince people or to help them understand that it's okay to be in a vaccine trial?
Well, the best way to convince people it's okay is to offer yourself up as an example. That's why I did it.
Which you've done.
That's why I did it.
You're leading by example.
Yep, my intention is purely and 100% hortatory.
Hortatory?
Yes.
What does that mean? Stop using these big words. Just, come on, talk to the little people like me.
It is to take an action that is intended to set an example to influence others. And so I was looking for the hortatory effects of my own participation in this study.
Yeah. So you've already started the study, or are you waiting for them to call you?
I have already started the study. I applied online like anybody can do, and I encourage people to go. What people need to realize, this coronavirus has severely impacted our lives. Apart from killing 170,000 people, it has shut down the commerce. I mean, nobody does anything the same the way they were doing before coronavirus. You can't even go to a restaurant without either some fear hanging over your head or without having to deal with social distancing. You gotta wear a mask. Your waiters come, they have on masks, and it just takes away some of the enjoyment of the experience. I don't know when you're going to get in the movie theater again. I don't know. That might happen.
You know, I heard on NPR this morning, people are already going back to the movie theaters.
Well, that's unusual.
Yeah.
And I would say somewhat risky, particularly if it's crowded. And if you're the only one sitting in there, you'll be fine.
Right.
So it depends on your taste of movies. If you go see movies nobody else likes, you'll be fine. Put on your mask and go sit in there by yourself. You might as well be sitting at home. But so many things. We're looking at a baseball stadium, holds 40, 50,000 people. I walk around this stadium for my exercise, and I have walked around here on numerous occasions where they were playing games inside that would normally attract a sold-out house. The place would be teeming with people both inside and outside the stadium. There would be revelry, people would be drinking and eating, enjoying the ball game. Nothing. Why? Because of coronavirus. So it seems to me that if you enjoy your life, if you need to work like we all do, if you need the economy to be humming, then we should be as aggressive as possible to help the scientists and the doctors find a treatments and cures for this, or treatments and vaccines for this virus.
Yeah.
Once we do that, we can get us back close to normal as is possible. So I don't see any downside. I see zero downside in participating in this experiment.
Okay.
Zero.
I think some of the hesitancy or the skepticism is because the process is a little mysterious. So,
and I tried to demystify by, I post on Facebook not as much as I used to, but I basically, once I decided I was going to do this, I announced on Facebook I was doing it. Of course, people blew back at me and asked me if I was crazy. And then as the process has unfolded, I have shared precisely what I have been experiencing.
So just give us some highlights so that people have a sense of what happens when you enter a vaccine trial.
Well, first you have to go online, put your name in, and hope they select you.
Mm-hmm.
If you are African American or you are Latinx, and if you have underlying conditions, you have a high likelihood of being selected.
Oh, really? That's
Absolutely.
great. Because we want people with health chronic conditions to be in these studies, right?
Absolutely. And and my people always complain about, the flip side of that coin about being afraid of vaccines and not trusting them. Is this common complaint that I hear, even among people of some scholarly note, is that, the pharmaceutical companies don't include black people when they test their drugs, so they don't know what the effect is on us. And there's some truth to that. We are typically underrepresented in those studies, those trials where they look at the effect of various pharmaceutical products. But how can we complain about being underrepresented if we don't agree to participate?
Sure.
So that's something we need to be cognizant of. So once you go online, identify your demographics, give them your contact information. They then reach out to you if you get selected, and they will invite you in for a screening. You're not automatically in once they invite you in for the screening. They have to determine that you are eligible, that you don't have COVID, you don't have any immunosuppressant drugs that you have to take, you don't have any condition that would make you incompatible for the trial. Mm-hmm. Once they determine that, in my case, then they educate you on, they send you a consent form in the mail that you can read, because it's like 21 pages. So I read that before I went in, and then when you go in, they go back over the consent form with you, and you have to initial and sign each page if you want to participate. There's no pressure. You can leave at any time. So I went in and I sat with a brilliant doctor and his aide, Dr. David Demont, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Demert, yeah.
Demert. And he explained to me the trial in detail, and he also explained why this one carries less risk than some of your older vaccine trials for polio and rubella and even the flu, because they're not using a live virus or even an attenuated version of the virus,
which is a weakened form of the virus.
Yeah, they don't use the weakened form. So there's no chance that you will be injected and all of a sudden the virus will return to its pathogenic form and destroy you. There's no chance of that.
Yeah.
And there are side effects that you have to be concerned about, but nothing that would cause me too much concern. And then, the one thing we talked about was if you take the vaccine and it works, and then you get exposed to COVID, there's a chance that your immune system can have an overactive response and put you in some jeopardy. But that's very rare. They didn't do a lot of animal trials, but they did test 12 primates. They injected
monkeys?
Yeah.
Okay.
They injected them with the vaccine, same vaccine that I may have received. I don't know, because it's a double-blind experiment, and I'll get to that later. But then they call these, I think they call them challenge studies. Once they injected these animals, they then purposely exposed them to the virus to see what would happen. And they all had the appropriate immune response. So, it's only 12 monkeys, but... Yeah,
but they fought off the virus and they didn't get COVID.
They didn't get COVID, and their immune system did not go into overdrive and eat their insides up. So I felt comfortable. I felt comfortable before he told me that. And then he, after they explain all that to you, they then draw about 6 vials of blood for all kinds of testing. They do a COVID test. I haven't heard back, and they said it takes 72 hours. I would assume that if I were positive, they would have called me by now because I had the COVID test. That was Wednesday.
How did they do the COVID test?
They stick that swab up your nose.
Yeah.
They tickle your brain.
Yeah, I've heard it's not pleasant.
It is not pleasant. Not as bad as I thought it would be, but it's still brutal. I thought it would be worse, but it's not comfortable. So they tickled my nose. They gave they told me the swabs would be tested, and I would know something in 72 hours. They have not contacted me yet, so I think I'm good. Then after they take the 6 vials of blood, which they will run all kinds of tests on, the infection specialist comes in and injects you. Doesn't tell you if it's a placebo, which is just like saline,
like sugar water,
or if you're getting the actual vaccine.
Is it painful injection?
It's the first injection that I had where he had to tell me he injected me.
Oh wow! So it's a small needle.
I felt absolutely nothing. I asked him why. He said, because these new needles are so small that you don't even feel it.
Okay. Well, that's a point of encouragement because some people don't want to be in the studies because they assume they're going to be injected by big needles and it'll be really painful. Oh.
I hate needles. My experience as a kid with needles were horrific. From the dentist to just the hospital. Back then, when I was a kid, the needles were like huge, and it literally felt like they were killing you when they injected you with a needle. So I hate needles. I've hated them from that day. But I swear I did not feel the injection. He had to tell me he was finished.
Okay.
So it is the process is just very well organized. The controls are massive.
The controls are massive. What do you mean?
In other words, everything they do is you know, you don't just come in and they inject you. They walk you through the process. They educate you on the vaccine. They test your blood, and you know, then they inject you. But the only person that knows whether or not I got the vaccine versus the placebo is the pharmacist that handed the needle or the medicine to the infection specialist. Infection specialist doesn't even know.
And when did you have your first shot?
I think it was Wednesday.
Last Wednesday, so a week ago.
Yeah.
So have you had any side effects or have you noticed anything?
I've not noticed a thing. Now, I will say, I have to go back in, and you have to go back in 28 days. Once they inject you, you download an app on your phone, and the app queries you every day to check on your temperature, whether or not you have any problems with lymph nodes under your arms.
They show you how to test that?
Yeah, they show you how to test you. They give you a thermometer. How you doing, man? They show you how to feel for lymph nodes under your arm. They ask you about whether or not you're fatigued, whether or not you've taken medication for any muscle pains, whether or not you have muscle aches, joint aches. And it's really simple. You basically answer yes, no, and you answer yes, no, submit the data, then another set of questions pop up, yes, no, submit the data. You do that every day. And I didn't know at the time, but they do pay you. I didn't think, they reminded me when I was in, said, we need your checking account information. I said, for what? They said, so we can, if you don't have a checking account, then we'll give you a card. But if you have a checking account, it's easy if I just put the money in your account. I said, money? I think they pay you about $1,000. They pay you incrementally. So.
Well, how long is the study?
Well, this is just a good question. They are scheduled to follow me up for 2 years.
Okay.
Now, so I'll get a second.
2 years though. We want this vaccine sooner than that. Why are they following you for 2 years?
Well, that's a good question. I'll get a second injection on the 28th. Now, if you're going to get sick, it's usually with the second injection because they give you I think a double load.
Okay. So we'll have to talk again.
Yes, in 28 days. It can knock you on your behind, from what I understand. And I saw an article in the paper with a guy who in New Orleans, I think it was New Orleans, and it flattened him. He's fine though, but he said it made him sick. I think he passed out, as a matter of fact. And I don't know if they stopped the heavy dosage because of that. But you do get a second dosage after 28 days. They call you 3 or 4 times between now and the next 28 days to check on you. And you continue to fill out the information on the app. And the key is, now they're scheduled to follow me for 2 years. I don't have to make that many trips to the hospital. But if they determine that the vaccine is effective, then the physicians who are involved in running the program will lobby the Moderna, the company that I'm taking the vaccine for, to end the experiment for me, so I can get, if I got the placebo, to let me come in before 2 years and get the actual vaccine.
Oh, I see.
You know, that has been, they have to give permission, obviously, but I've heard that once it's determined that a vaccine is effective, if you want the vaccine as opposed to the placebo that you had, then it's more likely than not that they'll give it to you.
Mm-hmm.
And you probably won't have to wait like everybody else.
So it's been a smooth process, it sounds like.
It has been exceptionally smooth. It has been very easy.
Are you surprised by how easy it is?
Well, I thought it would be more difficult and cumbersome than it has been, but it is not. It has been it's been easy.
So the people, you said on your Facebook page, people are saying things like you're crazy.
Oh yeah.
Why are they saying that?
The same stuff we talked about earlier. Folks are, first I put them in several groups. You got the anti-vax people. They don't believe in vaccines, period. You got people who are skeptical of the new technology. The mRNA, they don't trust it. You got people who said, if Trump is involved, I'm not going near it. And I tell them Trump has about as much to do with developing this vaccine as your next door neighbor's dog. I understand the suspicion around Trump, and I guess the fear is he's going to rush something to market before it's ready. But the vaccine trials are unaffected by that behavior. The vaccine trials, by definition, are to determine whether or not it works. So if you get the vaccine trial, you're getting the vaccine typically before it's ready for market anyway.
I think people are concerned that because the Food and Drug Administration oversees this process, that they may be pressured to release some information prematurely.
They may be, that may be, but it doesn't change the fact that you can if you get the vaccine, you can choose to stay in the study for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to. If FDA says this is safe, you can all get the vaccine. Then you can say, no, I'm gonna wait. So I think the fears are. I hate to treat people's fears with a whistle of contempt, but I just think they're not grounded in the facts around this particular project.
Yeah. Well, I hope after listening to you, some people will be convinced, and they're more likely to participate, and maybe they won't. If for those who are afraid, that this will help.
I told the doctor, I said, man, I finally told him that I work for the mayor, and I'm the deputy mayor for Health and Human Services.
Oh, he didn't know.
He didn't know. And so I told him, and I said, now what are you gonna do if I drop dead? He said, oh my God, don't say that. He said, please don't say that. He said, I'll leave the country. I don't know what I will do.
But it's interesting. This is exactly why I wanted to talk to you, because of your position.
Mm-hmm.
You are, you're one of our healthcare leaders. You are scientists. You understand science, but you also are from the country, aren't you?
I'm a country boy.
You understand the skepticism.
I am. My parents were born and raised by sharecroppers. In Enfield, North Carolina. We were dirt poor, but we had all we needed. They moved to Richmond just to have me, so I would be a city boy. But I would go back to North Carolina, Enfield, North Carolina, every summer and farm with my grandparents. It was a wonderful experience. I didn't know we were caught in the throes of the cousin of slavery. I was too young to realize it, but then as I learned more, I thought, oh, this is brutal. But yeah, I'm a country boy at heart.
So you understand why people are skeptical, but yet and still you encourage people to move forward, participating. So that's
I believe that
great.
there of course there are still elements in this society, as we have seen over the last 2 months, of that are the progenitors of vicious racism. And there will be an element of those folks who are always with us. There will always be strains of just vicious bigots. And there will always be a larger group of folks who are not vicious racists, but they are benign bigots. I don't let that stuff bother me, because the people that I deal with, the people that are in my circle, first of all, I don't think those people can affect me. I don't allow someone who lives their life feeding off of a racial hatred. They're just of no consequence to me. I just surround myself with positive, educated people who love me and I love them back, and that other stuff doesn't even matter to me. When I see it, I speak out against it, but it has no effect on me. It has no effect on what I try to do in my life. Has no effect on what I believe I can achieve. I just, I marvel at the phenomenon. I do. It always amazes me that people can develop a visceral hatred for you based on your skin color. They don't know anything about you.
Right.
And I've always been intrigued by that, but never slowed by it. I have this desire, and I'm maybe running out of time. I wanted to do my last research project. I want to identify as many of the old white racist warriors of the South and travel through the South and see if I get interviews with them.
Oh,
And see if I could successfully probe them on their thoughts, evaluate whether or not they've changed, if they have changed, why, if they have not, why, and then just do a book that contrasts them. And I thought about that on several occasions, because I've read stories about, I've seen, different news articles about folks journalists who have encountered people with the historical past from the racial struggle in the South. And I remember this sheriff who was responsible for he let the 3 civil rights workers out of prison, out of jail, to be summarily executed by the Klan. And I believe he was there when it was done. I know he let them out of jail with the, working in concert with the Klan. And he was interviewed, I think it was during the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Movement. Or maybe it was a little bit prior, maybe it was the 25th anniversary. And he was talking about that time. And while he wasn't progressive by any means, he talked about how wrong he was and how wrong and hateful it was. And then he started talking about Dr. King. And he said, I'll never forget, he said, oh, but that Dr. King, he said, I have never met a man of greater courage. And that just really struck me. I said, that just struck me to my core. I said, I would love to talk to some of those folks, even the ones who haven't changed. You still read about some of them who are just bathed in hatred.
Yeah.
And I would like to talk to them too.
Yeah.
But
so what's the plan? I think you should get that done.
Yeah, I would like to do it, but there's this thing called eating and feeding the family, and that kind of gets in the way.
No, I think you could definitely make this a passion project for sure. Even, especially nowadays, everything is happening virtually. So even just to interview 1 or 2 would be really remarkable. So I'm going to encourage you to move in that direction. If there's anything I can do to help you,
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I really want to do it.
Yeah.
I think I could write an incredible book. That's probably the only book that I really could write.
How long have I been telling you to write a book?
Because I could sink my my heart and soul into a project like that.
Yeah.
And I could write about it with great joy and great passion. And when there's something that you are passionate about and you like, and you love the subject, the words just flow.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to dig for them.
Right.
They just surface.
I've noticed that. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This was a great conversation. I can't wait to see how people react to it.